It's not even Halloween yet. It's not even close. It's the second week in August, but still, it's time for the spookiest episode of Life's Potluck Buffet. This is the ghost of John Paulus saying, thank you for listening. I had planned to do this episode with the lights off, holding up a flashlight to my face. You know, just to get into the spirit of things. Oh, in the spirit of things. Oh, that's a ghost joke. Spirit of things. And the other problem was I couldn't read the card in the dark, so I just figured I would do the episode with the lights on as usual. The ghost in me is a little bit disappointed, but that's how it goes. The reason this is the spookiest episode of the year, though it's August 10th, is that the card is card number 6. Be a good ghost who knows when to move on. If you watch K-dramas, I know I watch a lot of K-dramas. Do you watch a lot of K-dramas? You probably know that ghosts turn into evil spirits if they bear a grudge for too long and won't move on to the afterlife. The same is true for us and our jobs. All jobs have expiration dates, and so do we all. Beware of hanging on to a job for too... Oh, you thought the spirit of John Paulus was gone? No, he's back. Beware of hanging on to a job for too long, especially one that causes you and others resentment and strife. You always have to roll your R's when you're a ghost, right? Because, you know, somehow you're from some olden time when people trilled their R's in English. It's a ghost tip for you if you're reading ghost cards yourself. Speak about a job you hung on to for too long or when you let go at the right time. Did something come to mind? Did you have an apparition of a ghost of you past that hung on to a job for a little bit too long and things didn't end well? Or perhaps you got out just when you needed to. Think about those situations. If you've thought about those situations and ever given some serious thought to those situations, then you understand the premise of card number 6. Understanding and reading the signs of what is going on with your job or work life are essential to flourishing in life. Now, we can't always get the timing perfect, and we have to accept that fact. But the closer we can get to getting that timing just right, the better off we are in the long run. Although if we don't get the timing right, then we can reflect on a lesson well learned. If a job is causing you bitterness and resentment and strife, the first thing to do is to understand the source of that bitterness or resentment or strife. In my experience, we need to look at ourselves first in this case to understand what is going on. And doing so requires empowerment, and it requires self-awareness and acceptance. First, the self-awareness, the knowledge of what is causing the resentment, bitterness, and strife in your situation. When you know what that is, when you reveal that to yourself, the next step is accepting that, saying, okay, here is the reason for my resentment. Reason for my resentment, I accept you. I have just learned something about myself. I know something about myself. And the next step is the empowerment part, because the next step says, in response to that new knowledge, what do you need to do? You could talk to trusted others about this. If you could think about it yourself and come up with something, that's great. But it's good to talk to others. We know that because a lot of times when we're just talking to ourselves, we're not breaking out of our thought patterns. Others help us do that, and we help others do that. That's the strength of Life's Potluck Buffet cards, is that the information in the cards allows us to have conversations with others. And notice I'm always talking about that in these podcasts, about talking to somebody else, someone trusted, about the situation that you're going through, because that will help you reveal to yourself, and they will help you listen to yourself to understand what you're really saying. So that self-awareness and then that acceptance are the two first major steps to being a wise ghost. And it's kind of interesting because when you have this piece, you can change the way that you experience the work that you're doing, and often the resentment and bitterness go away. But nonetheless, you've discovered something new, so things have to change for you. So making a plan to extricate yourself from that situation is essential at that point. And we've had many cards where we've talked about coming up with future plans and coming up with the next step. On the YouTube playlist for card number 6, there's a really great video with 11 recommended K-dramas, and take a look at that video. I think it's good because it might give you some ideas if you're a big fan and you haven't seen some of these. They're all about ghosts. I'll tell you my favorites. I would love it if you, in the comments, tell me what your favorites are in terms of K-dramas involving ghosts. In that list, I would say Hotel Del Luna would be number 1 for me. Love that show. And I think that the clearest expression of this concept of the embittered ghost is in Oh My Ghost. That's basically the whole premise of that show. It's also a rom-com drama, that romantic comedy drama. Sounds like some sort of military command or something. But that idea of the ghost that was going to turn into an evil spirit if they remain here on Earth is clearly expressed in that one as well. If you asked me to do a top 10 list, I think the top 1 for me would be Mystic Pop-Up Bar. I just think that's an excellent show all around, and it just kind of checks all of the boxes for me for what a good K-drama treatment of the world beyond our lived reality works like. So if you haven't seen Mystic Pop-Up Bar, please do. And if you like Mystic Pop-Up Bar, it's hard to say. If you like Mystic Pop-Up Bar, please let me know in the comments. There's another short trailer on the playlist, which I'm actually just going to include in this podcast. And it's a short trailer video for card number 6 that I just think I love it. So I'm going to include that 33-second trailer. So I hope you enjoy that. I think we did pretty well without all of the trappings of the ghost story. Lights are on, no flashlight under my chin or campfire. If you're on the job and there's a bitter taste in your mouth and you haven't just had chocolate or coffee or an uncured olive, where did that come from? If you are eating an uncured olive right now, please let me know why. I know that there's a cuisine in China that uses uncured olives. I saw a short show about it, so I know that exists in the world. Oh, also, while I'm at it, I might as well ask, do you use in your cooking a pot that's maybe enamel over cast iron and has a lid of the same material? That's called in English a casserole or Dutch oven. If you do use that, let us know in the comments what you call it and what you use it for. Thanks. And hello. So if you have that bitter taste in your mouth and your work seems filled with resentment and strife, take a moment today to think about what ingredients are in this dish that have made it so bitter to taste. And then think about what needs to be added to the dish to get that bitterness out. Because then you'll know exactly when to move on and how. If you enjoyed this episode, I can't keep it up anymore. I'm sorry, the ghost of John Paulus is just a little bit exhausted with the ghost voice. But if you enjoyed, causing me resentment and strife, if you enjoyed this episode, please give it a like, subscribe, and head to lifespotluck.com for more. And stick around for the trailer to card number 6, and I'll see you next time.